Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and to live a more vibrant second half. Today, we are going to be talking about money. My guest today wants to help us to let go of a lot of our financial stress by shifting our money mindset and adopting some practical measures with our money to help prepare for our second half. My guest today is Emily Guy Birken. She's a financial expert, a self-proclaimed money nerd, and the author of The 5 Years Before You Retire, which has been called The Adventure Guide to Retirement. Emily, thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Emily, why don't you give us a little bit of a picture of why it is that you chose this mission and message and wrote this book at this time?
So I fell backwards into writing about money. I'm actually an English teacher by training. I have a gift of bad timing, though. My husband and I moved after my 4th year of teaching when I was pregnant with my eldest child, who was due at the beginning of the next school year. So, excellent timing. So the original plan was I was going to take a year off to stay home with my baby and then get back into the classroom. But during that year, also because of excellent timing, we were unable to sell our original house. And so we went from 2 incomes to 1, two people in the household to 3, and 1 mortgage to 2. So because of that, I wanted to bring in a little bit of money through freelancing because I've always been a writer. And one of the very first gigs I landed was for a financial podcast. A financial website. So now that might sound like it's completely out of left field, but I have always been a lifelong money nerd. My dad was a financial planner. And so I was like, I think I could do that. And I really loved it. I loved writing for that site. The editor passed my name along to his friends and invited me to a financial media conference the following year. And I found that having been a teacher put me in a unique position to help my readers better understand their finances. So that was 11 years ago in 2010, late 2010, that I started writing about finance. In the time between, I have authored 5 books. And in particular, I have found that my message really resonates with women who are a lot like me, women who are in their midlife, still raising kids or, saying goodbye and welcoming an empty nest, women who are dealing with elderly parents and helping them to retire or deal with health issues, women who have kind of coasted on finances, working just fine as long as you're making money, but not sure how to handle the transition to retirement, or if there is any kind of major disruption, like say, I don't know, a global pandemic or something. And so because of the way that I view money and the things that I have learned and have just loved reading about, both before I became a financial writer and since then, I have found that I have a message that really helps people to kind of let go of a lot of unnecessary financial stress feel more confident about the ability to meet any challenges coming head on and plan and prepare for the future without it being overwhelming. And so I really want to help as many people as I can. I want to help as many women as I can to let go of that stress and become more capable. Well, they're very capable, but feel more capable, feel more competent about their money, even if it's something that has been a source of stress or worry throughout their lives.
Emily, what do you find is the source of that stress for women? It does seem like women have a more difficult time coping with financial conversations and not necessarily managing money, but how we feel about money. What do you believe that to be?
So there's a couple things going on, especially with women. So for all human beings, we have weird money psychology. And that's because money doesn't actually exist. It's a delusion we all share. And it's when I say that, people are like, what? But the thing is, if you think about it, money doesn't exist in nature. You can't eat it. You can't build a house out of it. You can't wear it. You can't even spend it outside of places where it's accepted as legal tender. It has value only because we've all collectively agreed that it has value. And so because of that, we bring our own psychology, our own morality, our own sense of right and wrong, our own traumas to money. And so that can cause a great deal of stress because there are things that we believe about money that are not necessarily true. So for instance, I have this sense that I don't deserve money that I didn't personally earn. So in general, that doesn't cause me a great deal of stress. But when my father passed away and I was the beneficiary of his life insurance policy, I was overwhelmed with stress because it felt like this money should not be mine, and that using it for anything that felt good to me would be some sort of betrayal of my grief over my father. So that's one of those. That is a money psychology issue that is not uncommon. I've spoken to many other people who feel similarly when they inherit money, that causes stress that's unnecessary. There are similar ideas where people might have an idea about money that they need to project a certain appearance that is causing them stress because it costs money to have a certain type of car or to belong to a certain organization that costs money. And their sense is that they can't let go of that cost because of what it will mean to other people. And that is something that, because of how your money psychology is made up, you feel very strongly that that's true. So that's just human nature. That's what's going on for all people. Then you add on top of that the way that women are often shut out of financial conversations. We're much less likely here in 2022 to have, don't worry your pretty little head about it, than we were even, 10 years ago, 40 years ago, 70 years ago. But we still do get the subtle micro, not even aggressions, but belittling of women with money. There is this sense that money is a man's game. Investing is something men do. And so that causes a great deal of kind of, collective imposter syndrome for women. We are worried and concerned about jumping into this financial game because we have been shut out of it for so long, both overtly in the past and more covertly now. So that's something that women need to kind of recognize is part of where their reluctance may come from. And then the thing that is really amazing is that studies have shown women as a whole make better investors than men do. And it's because they actually invest more rationally than men do. And all of the stereotypes about women are actually true of male investors. Male investors are more likely to chase risk because of the way it feels. They're more likely to shy away from things and take money out of the market because of what everyone else is doing and follow the crowd. Whereas women, when they invest, and in part, I think this has to do with the fact that because we have been taught we don't know what we're doing, we do a lot more research.
Self-education and
Exactly. And, there is having imposter syndrome can be very useful because it does ask you to take a step back and ask yourself, is this the right thing to do before you make a move? But so women will do exactly what the best investors do, which is they'll make a plan for investing. They will research that plan and make sure it fits with what their goals are going to be. And then they stick to that plan even when things are going crazy. So when the market is going gangbusters and, all the bros on Twitter are going crypto all the way, it's going to save the world. Female investors are going, you know what, I might put $200 or $300 into that, but I'm going to stick with my plan. And then when things are tanking and people are going like, I need to take everything out of the market because I'm going to lose it all. Women are going like, I have a long-term plan and I'm going to stick to it because this is a downturn and over time the market goes up. And so I can wait this out. And so that's something that when I tell women that it can be really helpful in overcoming both that money mindset issue that's kind of a human problem and the particular problem that women experience of feeling like they are shut out of the financial conversations.
So what are some things that we can begin to implement as women to help ease our mind about financial worries, as well as soothe our fear of our inability about financial issues? Because they're working against each other. And I think our fear is probably greater than the reality. I feel like when we worry about something, it puts us in a state of alarm and we don't think as clearly. So, what strategies can we use to shift that mindset so that we can deal with the reality of our situation?
So one of the big things that I think can be very helpful is to make sure that you're putting power in the right place. Because a lot of times we'll talk about, I want to be financially secure. People are looking for financial security. And possibly the most depressing thing I'm going to say today is that there is no such thing as financial security. And by that, I mean, there is no amount of wealth that cannot be wiped out by some sort of horrible event. It's unlikely, but something could happen and Warren Buffett wouldn't be able to handle it financially. And, once you get to Warren Buffett levels, you're talking like alien invasion and money doesn't exist anymore. But even if you never get to that level, if you're never in the billionaire class, there is no amount of money that you can have that can't be destroyed in a moment by something that is completely outside of your control. Now that might, I can imagine your listeners are like, I thought you were going to help me feel better. But here's why that's actually kind of a hopeful thing. You don't need your money to handle anything. You need you to be able to handle anything. And you can. When you put your power in the money, like my money can handle whatever life throws at me, that is still acting as if you can't handle what life throws at you, and you can. So even if something were to wipe out your fortune, you have your skills, you have your moxie, you have all of your connections, your friendships, all of your intelligence, your education, and you can rebuild. And so that is one of the first things that I think women need to do is say, like, I have this. Yes, there might be a major problem. I might be facing a serious financial issue, but I have this because I have all of these things that help me build wherever I am in my life right now. And so I find that to be a very freeing, liberating sense of being, because it reminds you that even if you go through a devastating divorce or lose your job or have a health issue that sets you back financially, those are, I don't want to take away in any way from how devastating those can be, but you can say, I don't need my money to rely on. I need to rely on me. And I know I can, because I have my own back. And so that's a big part of it, is starting there. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have enough money coming in, knowing that you can handle it can be cold comfort. So that's where it is helpful to start looking at the actionable things that you can do to make your financial life easier. When it comes to actionable things, the first thing, in addition to changing that mindset and recognizing that you can rely on yourself, is building some slack into your finances. So a lot of times finances are overwhelming because we feel like there's not enough, and we are going from putting out one fire to the next. So, and by that, I mean, free up some extra money in your monthly budget so that you can set aside for an emergency fund, or that can just help make ends meet a little bit more easily. Now, this is where a lot of times you'll see other financial experts say stuff like, buy the generic toilet paper and save the difference, which is not helpful. Or they'll say, like, it's way cheaper to live in Iowa, which is not helpful. So I like to provide some real actionable things that you can do. The first one is, if you regularly get a tax refund every year, you can adjust your withholding with your employer so that you have more money in each paycheck. Now, there's some caveats to that. The first being, if you do regularly get a refund and you have it earmarked for different things, that you'll have to figure out other ways of handling that. You also, if you're someone who likes to get a refund because you're afraid of owing, making sure that you get the withholding right can be a little nerve-wracking. But this is something that takes less than 10 minutes. You go down to your HR department, ask for a new tax form, fill in a new withholding amount. You can go to the IRS website to the calculator to determine the correct number of withholdings to make sure you don't owe and don't receive a refund, or as close as possible to that. And then within 2 weeks, your next paycheck will be a little bit bigger. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't know that they can do. They feel very uncomfortable with the idea of, like, oh, isn't that illegal? No, you can claim whatever number of withholdings you want, as long as you make it correct on your tax return. So that's one thing that I think is really powerful, particularly if you're feeling overwhelmed financially right now and need some immediate help. Another thing is to negotiate your regular bills. So cell phone and internet are both really good ones to start with, in part because both of those business plans are set up to keep customers who are threatening to leave. And so they are willing to cut deals if you are threatening to leave. So it's not enough to just call and say, like, hey, I'm going to leave. What can you do for me? Do a little bit of research, find out if they are offering lower prices to new customers, and say, can I get the new customer price? Find out if there is another vendor in the area, another cell phone you'd prefer to use, another internet service provider that you'd prefer to use, and their price, and see if they will match it. And so that's something that can often free up money every single month for you. And so that is another one that gives you back. It can be something as much as $100, $200, $300 a month without changing your life in any way. Then there's also the possibility of doing things like refinancing any loans that you may have so that you are paying less per month. That can be a way of freeing up more money each month. And so by building that slack into your monthly budget, and all of these things are things that you can do relatively quickly that have a pretty quick turnaround in terms of feeling more flush each month, then you can use that extra slack to start building something that helps you get ahead. So starting with an emergency fund so that you've got money set aside for the next time you have a fire you have to put out. Working on paying down debt so that you have less money going toward each month so that your paycheck goes farther. Starting to set money aside for future expenses, both setting money aside for retirement and also doing some targeted savings for the things that are always surprising you. So for instance, when I pay my car insurance bill, it's every 6 months instead of monthly. And early on, when I was first out on my own, every 6 months, it would be like, oh no, where am I going to get that money from? And so because I did not budget for it monthly, I was scrambling every time. And so one of the things that you can do to kind of get ahead of those things is sit down, figure out what those irregular bills are, and start targeted savings where you put money aside each month to go towards that. So when the bill comes due, you're like, hey, I've got it already. I've got $600 in my savings account that's earmarked for this particular thing. And so I don't have to worry about it. And it doesn't affect my monthly budget in any way.
Okay. So basically it's baby steps.
Yes. One of the things that's tough about working in the financial industry is that there's a lot of promises of get rich quick. And it's a different one every 10 years or so. There was Beanie Babies in the 90s. Then there was the .com. Then it was flipping houses. And now it's crypto and NFTs. I'm very curious what it's going to be in, 2032. But it's always something. And there are always individuals who do make it big, just as there are always individuals who win the lottery or who do great in Las Vegas. But that doesn't mean that getting rich quick is an actual plan. The only way to really win with money is to start with small changes and watch them grow over time. Because the small changes you make in planning ahead for your regular bills, in having an emergency fund, in paying down debt, in keeping track of your spending, all of those very, very little things, it's like compound interest in that it starts off very small, but it compounds over time to the point where 10 years down the road, you're so much further along than you could have imagined just because of the compounding of those tasks.
Mm. So it's super unsexy.
Very unsexy, unfortunately.
But it's doable. That, like you said, because it's unsexy, because it's practical, because it's something you can actually do without a humongous education, if you will. It does make it less daunting.
Yes. One thing I like to compare it to is doing your laundry, because we've all had that experience of like, you hate doing your laundry, so you don't do it. In fact, you run to Target and buy new underpants because you just don't want to deal with the laundry. And then when you do it, it is a full 48-hour affair to get everything clean and folded and sorted and all of those things. And you learn, you go from like when you're in your early 20s where you do that boom and bust laundry cycle, that you learn, no, it's a lot easier if I just do like a load every day, or, I have a laundry day that I take care of it all, rather than doing that boom and bust cycle. Money is very similar in that, just like laundry, the task is never done. Like one of the things I joke is, as I'm doing laundry, I'm like, surely I should be coming to the end of it by now. I've been doing laundry for 25 years. And similarly with money, you never come to the end of money tasks. And so recognizing that and accepting that is really, really helpful, in the same way that accepting that, no, you really just have to be a grown-up and do your laundry is really helpful. And you're no longer scrambling to find something clean and business-like to wear to work. And it's also freeing because that leaves you room to figure out a way to enjoy it. Figure out a way to make this regular daily task less onerous, because no one's going to like doing laundry. I don't think there's anyone in the world who actually enjoys it. But you may find like, hey, I listen to podcasts while I'm folding, and actually, that I get into a rhythm and it's kind of nice. Similarly, when you just accept that, the unsexy work of, regularly checking in on your money, regularly doing these things is something that I can find a way to enjoy. Maybe I pour a glass of wine while I go over my money over the past month, or maybe my husband and I sit down together and we do money stuff over pancakes. However you can find a way to enjoy it, that really does make a big difference and makes it part of your daily routine rather than something I gotta do now.
I think it's scary to face money for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it.
Yes. And that's very understandable where, you don't want to face where you are. My fourth book was called End Financial Stress Now. And after it came out, a friend of mine reached out to me saying she's, really pleased for me. She bought a copy of the book to support me, but she was afraid to read it. And I was like, oh my goodness, why are you afraid to read it? Because I specifically wrote this book. This was, a labor of love. I specifically wrote it to help people feel less stressed. And she said, well, I'm afraid it's going to tell me I'm doing everything wrong and that things are worse off than I thought they were. That's an understandable fear. No matter what arena of life, there have been times where you felt that way. It might have been, after after the pandemic, you're afraid to step on the scale. It might be after you haven't been to the dentist in 10 years, you're afraid to go because of what they're going to tell you. After you have, decided to stop smoking, you're afraid to go to the doctor to see if there's damage. The thing is, in every case, it's better to know. It's better to know where you are. And with money, oftentimes it's not nearly as bad as you're afraid of. Now, one of the things that I like to compare, another comparison I make with money is people who are like afraid to deal with money. I'll ask them, like, do you cook? And, pretty much always they're like, yeah, I cook. I'm like, do you cook chicken? Yes, I cook chicken. What's the worst thing that could happen if you cook chicken badly? It could make someone sick or maybe kill someone. What's the worst that happens if you screw up your money? I have less money. So I'm not going to say that that's not a stressful thing, but as my sister likes to remind me when I'm stressing out about something, she's like, no babies will die if you mess this up. So, this is not this is not a pediatric oncology moment. It's not even a cooking chicken cacciatore moment and getting the temperature wrong. And we do things every day that have potential higher stakes than dealing with money. Mm-hmm. And so if you are comfortable with those other higher stakes, then it's can be really helpful to be like, you know what, this is just like cooking chicken. This is actually safer than cooking chicken. I can do this. I can do this.
I love that. We do things every day that have higher stakes than money. Mm-hmm. I feel like it really does come down to, so many things come down to what we think and believe about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If we could shift away from the belief mm-hmm. and replace it with strategies. Because I think the shift in belief won't really happen until we start taking action. Is that true?
Partially, yes. And so some of the taking action doesn't necessarily have to be taking money action. Some of it can be about rewriting the scripts that you carry about money. So when children have an imperfect understanding of the world, and this is true of every aspect of life. So, for instance, my mom likes to tell the story of when she was a little girl. She thought that doctors weren't allowed to get sick, and if they did, they'd go to jail. So that was her, very juvenile understanding of the world. Now, because we talk about doctors, we talk about illness, and we talk about jail, she was disabused of that notion naturally. When it comes to the ideas that we form about money in childhood, because money is a taboo subject in our world, we are not disabused of those notions. So if you have the idea that money is scarce and I'm all moments away from losing everything, even if that is objectively not true, because we don't talk about it, that's going to stay there. That's going to be a belief that remains in your head. And so one really helpful way of taking action, if even the idea of like, oh my goodness, even just logging into my bank account gives me hives. One of the things is to sit with the discomfort and say, what am I afraid of? So I'm afraid if I check, I'm going to discover that there's a lot wrong. Okay. So you can write that down, cross it out and say, when I check, I will make sure to put things right. And so that kind of, again, rewrites that script that you have that, you might be thinking, I'm not good with money. You can rewrite that and say, I am a capable person who can handle her finances. And, it sounds very woo-woo, Stuart Smalley, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. But there is a reality to that, that is how our brain works. Our brain reacts to our own language. And so I really do like the journal prompt of like kind of writing down your fears, actively crossing them out and rewriting them as a positive statement about your abilities.
So the action, like you said, isn't necessarily money action, but you're still taking action. You're not just mulling it over and stewing in your own juices. You're taking the time to empty your mind of the thoughts and really thinking about, what do I believe about money? Because I'm not sure that we always know why it feels stressful to us.
Yes. And that's something that it can be very difficult to root out. So I'll give you an example of a belief, a very limiting belief that I had for a very long time. And I didn't even know it was there. I just felt a kind of a general anxiety. So I had this sense that I had a short period of time during which I could accomplish something great in my life. So I had until I was about 45. After that point, I was not going to be able to accomplish something. I didn't know that was in there. I didn't even really think about it. I didn't know, like it just was, I had this sense of a ticking clock. And it took seeing someone I respected do something amazing in her 60s for me to go like, oh, wow, that gives me so much hope. And then I started like, why? Where did that come? What's going on? And I started realizing, no, I have this sense that if to accomplish something as a woman, you have to do it when you look a certain way, when you look fairly youthful. And that there are, because women become invisible after a certain point, they are no longer able to accomplish things. And then, as I dug down deeper, I started realizing like, oh, I have this sense that accomplishments are something that men bestow on women. Like, wow, that is gross. Where did that come from? Why is that in there? How can I rewrite that? And so, yes, that was, not necessarily money related. That was career related, the belief system that I had that was very limiting. And that is something that's happens to all of us. We have these, we carry these beliefs in our heads subconsciously and live by them in ways that does not help us meet the goals we want to meet and do the things we want to do. And so with money, it can be so helpful to really sit with any discomfort you feel and kind of winnow down to where that comes from. And if you're struggling, if any of the listeners are struggling with like, okay, I don't know how to do that, I don't know how to sit with that, there's a really great exercise that I like called the 5 whys. And so I start with, okay, poof, your fairy godmother has just given you $3 million. I used to say $1 million, but $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to. So your fairy godmother has just given you $3 million. The first thing you would buy, like, don't think about it. Don't go, well, I want to research. No, like gut feeling. What would you buy? Okay. So write that down. Now start asking why. And that's where the 5 whys comes in. So the 5 whys was a diagnostic strategy created by the Toyota company for figuring out what's wrong with an engine. You start by stating the problem, and then you ask why that problem is there until you get to the root. With the $3 million question, you start by saying what it is you would buy, and then you answer why. So for instance, let's say like $3 million, first thing you would buy, whole new wardrobe. Why? Well, because I always want to make sure that I have the best clothes. Why? Because I just feel better when I know that I am dressed well and look good. Why? Well, because when I was in high school and middle school, I'd get made fun of for my clothes. Why? Because we didn't have much money. And so I was always wearing hand-me-downs or things from thrift stores. And so once you get down to that why, you're starting to realize like, okay, so the $3 million would allow me to feel better about something that happened when I was in childhood, which was when kids were being mean to me because of how I looked. And so that there's a belief in there that money can help me feel like I belong in a way that I did not feel when I was a child.
Yeah. There's that psychological wall that we have to climb, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
something that's built a wall around that topic,
Mm-hmm.
in this case, money. And I do feel like money beliefs tend toward limiting over
Yes.
abundance.
We are in a society that has, that as a society has pretty limiting beliefs about money. And even the kind of abundance beliefs can be limiting. So in America, one of our abundance beliefs is that anyone can be rags to riches. And so that abundance belief is very inspiring. You know, the Horatio Alger idea of like anyone can make it in America. And that's true, but that doesn't mean that everyone can make it in America. And because of that, that kind of abundance belief that anyone can, we have a limiting belief that only the people who deserve it should. And so rather than making sure that there is a level of generosity towards everyone. And so that's something that, again, it's very hard for us to talk about because we don't think that this is, a reasonable topic of conversation. And so we have all of these limiting beliefs, and they can be contradictory limiting beliefs, even within our own head and among relationships. And it causes friction and stress because we do not take the time to examine what it is we actually believe.
And the amount of energy we don't realize that we're losing by hanging on to those things as well.
Yes.
When, like you said, there are practical things we can do, as unsexy as they are, they put us in the driver's seat.
And that's something I think if people recognize the trade-off they're making, it's really helpful. So, I know a lot of people will say, I don't like thinking about money. It stresses me out. I'm like, that's fair. Okay. That's fair and reasonable. And I understand that. So there are things I don't like thinking about because it stresses me out. Get it. So here's the option. You can have a weekly check-in or a monthly check-in with your money where you handle the things and you have, like the stress of that regular check-in, and that will kind of smooth things out and help make sure that money keeps flowing in the direction you want it to and allows you to meet your goals. Or you can choose not to think about money until it becomes something you have to deal with and it's a fire you have to put out. Which of those is less stressful? And so, putting it that way can kind of help people recognize like, oh yeah, I'm stressing out about the wrong thing. Like the little regular periodic check-ins is a lot less stressful than just not thinking about it.
And when you say periodic check-ins, give me an example of what a periodic check-in might look like for someone who's like really stressed. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like the scariest thing, the monster under the bed or the monster in the closet.
Sure.
What's a simple baby step?
A simple baby step is open up your bank portal and look at your balances. Okay. Now, and that's something where like, if it's terrifying, like, and that's all you have to do. So open it, look at your balances. Okay. Now, in a lot of cases, that is going to activate you to do something, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to overdraw it when my rent check is due next week, something like that. So like, go ahead and do those things. But that's it, like first time, just check, take care of the things that you need to take care of right away. Then the next time, check in, same thing if there's things you need to take care of right away, but then also take a quick look at your expenditures. Just like, and one of the wonderful things about living in the future like we do is that your bank portal will show you how your expenditures break down. So it'll show you like you spent this much at, your favorite diner, or you spent this much on online shopping or, whatever it is. And so, quickly check to see what that is. You don't have to get into the nitty gritty details. Just, it'll give you the percentages or bar graph or pie chart or something like that. Just take a look and shut it down again. Because just looking at that and going like, holy cow, did I really spend $750 dining out last month? How is that possible? Just having checked and seen that allows you to go next, as you're making decisions this week. If someone says like, hey, you want to go grab drinks and maybe dinner later? It allows you to go, okay, I'll do a drink, but I can't do dinner, because I'm thinking about how my money was spent last month. And that can be like very, very empowering, because it's just having that information helps you make your decisions. So again, like, it's baby steps. You don't need to jump in all at once. This is not about, going from not paying attention to your money to having a rainbow colored spreadsheet that you fill in with every single penny you spend. It's not that. No, this is about slowly making changes, doing the things that are going to make you feel better tomorrow. So if you think about it as you're taking care of your tomorrow self, you're doing something that your tomorrow self will be glad to wake up to every time you deal with your money.
Well, Emily, I would love to have you've given us some great tips. So maybe this is a repeat conversation, or 3 things that have come to your mind. What are 3 things you really want the listeners to anchor into in this money conversation, especially women in that midlife? Mm-hmm. There are a lot of women who are going through marital change on top of career change. And so, married women and single women both need to think about money. But I think there's a lot of added dimension to this midlife money conversation. So if you were to sit with my audience as you are now and individually give them, 3 things to really anchor in on, what would those be?
First is that you are worth it and you are enough. We don't hear that enough as women. We consistently get the message that we are not worth it, that we are not enough, that we need to do something different. We need to be different. And one of the most wonderful things about reaching my 40s, and I'm sure it will continue to get better, is I stopped caring. And I stopped caring what people think of me and whether or not I'm enough for them, because I'm enough for me. And that doesn't sound like it's money related, but it is. Now is the time to go after the salary that you deserve. Now is the time to go after the divorce settlement that you deserve. Now is the time to recognize your worth and make sure that that is part of what you ask for in this world. So that's the first thing. The second is to remember that little things make a difference. And you have seen that in many other parts of your life. Every single person has something that they made a small change and it made a big difference. Whether it's, they cut out caffeine and it affected their sleep, or, they started, having neighbors over and now the whole neighborhood is friendly. Their little things make a big difference. So identify a little thing that you can improve with your money and just start there. It doesn't have to be huge, just a little thing that you can do that's not going to be onerous, that can help you feel better about your money, help your money take better care of you. And then the third thing is, make sure you put yourself first. Women in midlife in particular, but throughout their lives, often will put themselves last. They'll be at the bottom of the list. They'll, I need to take care of the kids. I need to take care of my spouse. I need to, make sure my parents are doing such and such and this and that. And midlife is a perfect time to put yourself first. And the specific way I'd love to see all of your listeners put themselves first is by making sure they're putting money aside into a retirement account, so that they will have a good nest egg to have a fulfilling and satisfying retirement when they're ready.
Something we didn't talk about, but we're right at our time. Is it ever too late to start?
Oh, no. It is never too late to start. It does not matter where you are. You can always start, because your tomorrow self will always be glad that your today self did it. And that doesn't matter if you're 20 and your tomorrow self is 60 something, or if you're 60 something and your tomorrow self is 80 something, because your future self can't do what your today self can do now. So don't worry about what yesterday's self did. That's not a problem. Worry about today, what you can do today and how that will help your tomorrow.
Emily, thank you so much for coming on and being so easy to talk to about such a difficult topic.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
You made it very painless, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that this conversation will begin to spark some inspiration in my listeners. How can people find you and your books, Emily?
So you can find me at my website, emilyguyberken.com. You can also, if you happen to be in one of the cities where I'll be going, I am going on tour with my co-author for my most recent book, Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management. We'll be on a 40-city tour. Well, Joe is going to be on all 40 cities. I'm doing about 12 or 15 of them. But if you go to emilyguyberken.com/stacked, you can find the information about our tour. And I would love to say hi to you if we'll be there. We'll be on tour April and May. And you can also reach me if you're on Twitter. I love to connect at Emily Guy Birken. So those are all places you can find me. You can also find my books anywhere books are sold.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. Today, friends, I've been speaking with Emily Guy Birken. She's a financial expert and a self-proclaimed money nerd and the author of The 5 Years Before You Retire and End Financial Stress Now. If you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 267, you will find links to Emily and Emily's books there. And while you're there, please leave your name and email address in the pop-up box. I send out periodic encouraging emails. Friends, this money conversation no longer has to cause you stress. It no longer has to cause you anxiety. We can become friends with our money in our mindset, and we can begin, like she said, today's self can make different decisions and baby steps. I encourage you to find the resource, like Emily's books, that will help you feel more powerful around the topic of money and begin to take those baby steps. No matter how little is more than nothing. So be courageous, my friends, face these fears, and let's begin to change our futures because, like Emily said, you are worthy, you are worth it. Go for it, my friends. No longer living with fear. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. I look forward to sharing more inspiring guests with you and conversations in the future. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.